Before you listen to this story, please turn off the lights in your room or make them very dim. Put your phone down, get comfortable, and let your body relax. Take a slow, deep breath, then gently let it go. You do not need to think about your day anymore. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just listen calmly and let my voice guide you. This story is not meant to excite your mind, but to help it slow down. Allow your thoughts to fade, your breathing to become steady, and your body to feel heavy and safe. As the story begins, you can simply rest and slowly drift toward peaceful sleep. In a quiet little valley, tucked far away from any grand stone castle or busy market town, where the thick, dark forest presses close on every side like an ancient guardian that lets in only thin, pale winter light and keeps the wide world at a distance, and where the open fields now lie sleeping under a deep, soft blanket of pure white snow that covers every bump and hollow and makes the whole land feel hushed and waiting as if holding its breath for spring to whisper it awake again. There is a small, nameless village of simple low huts built long ago from mud, carefully mixed with straw and animal dung to hold together through many seasons. Walls woven with thin, flexible sticks in a pattern called wattle that bends but does not break in strong winds. Patched over the years with fresh daub whenever rain or frost found a crack. Roofs piled thick with heavy thatch made from dried reeds or straw that looked golden and warm when first laid, but now lies dark and heavy under layers of frost and snow that sparkle like tiny stars when weak sunlight touches them for a short hour around midday. Doors made from rough planks hung on old leather hinges and closed tight each night with a simple wooden latch or iron hook to keep out the sharp biting wind that searches restlessly for any small opening. Windows, nothing more than small square holes in the wall with wooden shutters that never quite close all the way, so cold air still slips in along the edges, carrying the clean, sharp smell of snow and ice. The single room inside each hut, crowded with everything a family needs, to live sleeping pallets of straw stuffed into rough cloth sacks placed on the packed earth floor that grows cold and hard in winter. A central hearth built from stones and clay where the fire burns low but steady, sending its precious heat outward and its smoke upward through a hole in the roof that lets in a circle of gray sky. Wooden benches and a small table carved by someone's grandfather long ago. A chest for storing grain or clothes. Bundles of dried herbs and onions hanging from the rafters, giving off faint, familiar scents. And always animals sharing the space because their warmth is needed as much as their milk or eggs. The cow tied gently in one corner, breathing slow and deep. Chickens nesting quietly in straw boxes or under the table. Perhaps a goat or a pig if the family is fortunate enough to have kept them through the year. All adding their soft sounds and warm breath to the hazy, smoky air that stings eyes a little but means life and safety from the deadly cold outside. Winter arrives not with a sudden roar or dramatic storm, but slowly and patiently, day by quiet day. Beginning back in late autumn, when the first mornings bring a sharper bite to the air that makes fingers stiffen quickly while milking or fetching water. When the sun rises later and lower in the sky, giving only pale, thin light that touches the skin, but gives almost no warmth. When leaves fall completely from the trees, leaving branches black and bare against the gray sky. When the ground that was soft and muddy from autumn rains begins to harden underfoot, turning paths into frozen ridges and holes that catch boots and make every step outside careful and slow. You feel the coming hardness in your body before you see it fully. In the way old aches wake earlier and settle deeper in joints tired from the year's endless work. In the way breath starts to show white in front of your face, even inside the hut on colder mornings. In the way animals grow quieter and stay closer to shelter, watching you with patient, knowing eyes, as if they understand better than people how long and difficult the season ahead will be. Chickens stop their busy scratching to huddle together with feathers puffed out against the chill. The dog listens carefully to every new sound the wind makes instead of barking. The cow stands longer in her corner, giving less milk each day because cold takes strength from her too. Everyone moves a little faster when outside, not from excitement, but because movement keeps blood flowing and standing still lets the cold sink in like water into dry earth. At first, everyone tries to believe the cold is only passing through like a short visitor. Wearing the same worn tunic and wool trousers from warmer months, but adding whatever extra layers can be found, an old cloak patched many times, with odd pieces of cloth, that is more holes than whole fabric, but still helps block some wind. A thick wool shirt that scratches skin but holds warmth close. Socks knitted from sheep wool, if the family has any left after trading or mending. Feet wrapped in clean rags when socks wear through because leather shoes or boots are precious and must last many years. Hands covered with rough mittens made from old sacks or animal skin if someone was skilled enough to cure it properly. You stuff handfuls of dry straw or old cloth rags into the larger cracks in the walls where wind whistles loudest. Pack mud mixed with straw over smaller gaps that open during last frost. Hang heavy pieces of old sacking or woven cloth across the inside of the doorway to trap warmth when the door is opened for chores. Move the straw pallets closer together around the hearth so the fire's heat reaches sleeping bodies better, even if it means lying. Almost touching cousins or grandparents who shift in their sleep or breathe heavily, but whose shared warmth saves lives on the bitterest nights. The fire becomes the true center of everything. The one thing that must never be allowed to die completely, because without its glow and heat, the hut would grow as cold inside as the frozen world outside, and bodies would weaken quickly until sleep turned dangerous. Wood for the fire is gathered and worried over more than food itself, because fire cooks what little food there is. Warms air just enough to make breathing comfortable. Dries wet clothes and blankets hung on strings, stretched across the room above the flames. Gives the only light when darkness falls early and heavy each evening. Keeps wolves or foxes a little farther from the door, though hunger makes them bold sometimes. Gathering began in autumn, when neighbors reminded each other to start early and cut plenty, but time always ran short with late harvest or endless rain, or someone falling ill needing care. So even now, in deepest winter, you still wrap up warm and go out to the allowed edges of the Lord's forest, searching under snow for fallen branches or dead wood that common people may take without punishment. Collecting dried cow or goat, dung from summer pastures, now hidden under white, shaping it carefully into flat cakes that dry hard and burn, slow with a strong earthy smell, but give steady heat when better fuel runs low. Chopping frozen logs brought home earlier with the old family axe, whose wooden handle is cracked and bound with twine many times, and whose iron blade is dull from generations of use, but still bites into wood with enough swings. Hands growing numb and painful, even through thick wrappings as you work quickly before cold becomes too deep. Breath coming in thick white clouds that freeze on beard or eyelashes. Carrying armfuls or dragging small sleds back through drifting snow to add to the precious stack, built carefully against the outside wall, covered with whatever old cloth or straw mats can be spared to keep most snow off, though wind and drifting always find ways to cover some anyway. Each evening you count the remaining wood quietly in your mind, knowing exactly how many days or weeks might be left if the cold stays this fierce or grows worse with new storms. Saving every twig and chip for morning starts. Burning larger pieces only when everyone gathers close for the evening meal and stories. Banking the fire carefully at bedtime with thick ash to hold embers safe through the long night, so only a breath and a few dry kindlings are needed to bring flame back at dawn. Food stores are watched just as closely and stretched with even greater care. The sacks of barley, rye oats, and dried peas, kept raised on stones in the driest corner to slow rats, though clever ones still find paths in. Turnips and cabbages buried deep in straw pits that stay cool. Strings of onions and garlic hanging from rafters slowly shrinking as they are used one by one. Perhaps a small barrel of salted pork or smoked fish hidden carefully under straw if the family managed to keep and slaughter a pig in autumn, sharing some with neighbors but saving enough for hardest months. The big iron or clay pot hangs always on its hook or chain over the fire, never completely emptied or scrubbed clean, holding the thick, warm pottage that becomes the heart of every meal day after day, week after week. Started fresh when flour and stores allow, but usually kept going by adding more water and handfuls of grain or sliced roots or dried herbs saved from summer gardens. Boiled slowly until everything softens into filling stew that tastes of earth and smoke and whatever onion or leek or wild garlic can be spared. Eaten twice daily, with heavy dark bread baked in the shared stone oven at the village edge when enough families gather flour for a baking day. Loaves made from rye or barley, sometimes mixed with ground acorns carefully soaked in stream water many times to remove bitterness, or dried beans, ground fine to make loaves bigger and lasting longer. Bread that comes hot and fragrant from the oven on baking day, spread thin with precious butter, churned from whatever cream the cow still gives, or a little lard saved from slaughter. Then wrapped tight in cloth and eaten piece by piece over following days, softened in pottage, when it grows too hard to bite alone because nothing is ever thrown away. when hunger waits patiently in every stomach, ready to grow sharper as spring delays. Hunger in winter is not always loud or angry. Most days it is a steady, quiet emptiness that makes movements slower and thoughts turn often to the next small meal, that keeps voices softer to save strength, that makes children play less wildly and grown-ups argue less because anger burns energy better used for chopping wood or mending tools, that turns every small unexpected gift into quiet joy, an extra egg laid despite cold, a forgotten turnip found deeper in the straw, a handful of dried berries or apples shared silently by a neighbor who had a few more than needed, a clear day when sun feels almost warm on the face for a short while. Animals share the crowded hut not only for protection from wolves or deep snow, but for the warmth their bodies give back through long nights. The cow standing or lying patiently in her corner, giving off steady heat like a living stove. Chickens roosting in boxes or under benches, adding soft clucks and flutters as they settle. Goat or pig, if present, moving gently in limited space, adding their particular smells and sounds to the thick, smoky air that fills the room from hearth to rafters. Smells that seem strong and close in summer, but feel comforting and safe in winter because they mean life continuing together in the only warm place for miles around. Evenings bring the whole family close around the glowing hearth, sitting on low benches or directly on scattered straw on the floor. Faces lit orange and soft in flickering light. Hands held out to warm or busy with small tasks, like mending clothes with careful stitches, using bone needle and thread spun from wool. Sharpening tools on a whetstone with slow, steady scrapes. Spinning more wool on a simple drop spindle, turning steadily to make new thread for spring planting clothes. Telling long, quiet stories passed down from grandparents about winters, much harder than this one, survived by cleverness or faith or neighbors, helping without being asked. Singing old gentle songs about green summer fields or love found young or saints who watched over poor farmers. Praying together, kneeling on the cold earth floor before sleep, asking protection through the coming night and strength for tomorrow's chores, and quiet thanks for fire that lasted, and food that filled and roof that held against new snow. Voices low and calm, blending with crackle of burning wood and soft breathing of animals, until eyelids grow heavy and bodies tired from the day's cold work settle onto pallets under piled blankets and cloaks and whatever animal skins the family owns. Children placed carefully in the warmest middle spots, heads covered to keep warmth close. The hut falling into deep darkness, broken only by faint red glow of banked embers, carefully covered with ash to preserve them until dawn. Sounds gentle and familiar all around the wind, whispering high in the thatch overhead, searching for weak spots. Snow sliding softly off the roof in small avalanches when warmth below melts ice. An animal shifting or dreaming with a soft snort. Family breathing slow and deep in sleep. Perhaps an elder murmuring old words in a dream, and in that close darkness, thoughts slow and soften too. drifting gently over small events of the day or worries set aside until morning light. Gratitude felt wordlessly for another day survived together, for warmth shared and fire tended, and bellies not completely empty. Sleep coming deep and welcoming, because hard work and constant cold make the truest lullaby, pulling everyone down into heavy rest that renews strength for whatever tomorrow brings in this long, quiet season of waiting and enduring and holding life carefully close until the world outside begins to wake again. As the long, dark weeks of winter stretch on and the snow piles higher against the hut walls until it almost reaches the low eaves and the wind finds new ways to whistle through the thatch, no matter how many times you climb up with frozen BA. Fingers to pack fresh straw into weak spots. The days begin to feel like one long, quiet waiting. Waking each morning to the same dim gray light, filtering weakly through the shutter cracks, and the same sharp cold that greets you the moment you throw back the heavy wool blankets piled high for warmth. Your breath hanging white in the smoky air as you rise carefully from the straw pallet shared with family, all pressed close through the night. Children still burrowed deep in the warmest middle spots, dreaming softly. Parents and grandparents on the edges where cold creeps in first, but never complaining because the young ones need protection most. The packed earth floor hard and icy, under bare or rag-wrapped feet as you move quietly to the hearth to uncover the banked embers, saved carefully under thick ash, blowing gently and adding the smallest twigs and kindling to coax flame back to life without wasting a single piece, because wood is measured now, not in armfuls, but in days of survival. The faint red glow growing slowly into small, steady flames that push back the darkness, just enough to see familiar faces and shapes in the single crowded room where life continues close and shared for months without break. The animals stir too as light grows. The cow shifting in her corner and giving a low, soft moo that means she feels the cold in her bones as much as anyone. Chickens fluttering down from their roost under the bench or in straw boxes to peck hopefully at scattered grains saved for them. The goat or pig, if the family has one moving restlessly in limited space, adding their warm breath and particular smells to the thick, hazy air, already heavy with smoke and damp wool and people who wash less in winter because water freezes. Fast and carrying it from the well numbs hands painfully. Yet these smells and sounds feel comforting in their sameness, because they mean the hut is alive and warm against the frozen world outside where nothing moves except wind driving snow into drifts that block paths and bury fences until froze. Neighbors dig together in silent groups to clear a way to the clear. Well or wood stack or between huts, so no one is cut off completely. Hunger grows a little sharper each week as stores shrink no matter how carefully they are watched. The sacks of grain and dried peas seeming to empty faster than days pass. Turnips and cabbages pulled one by one from straw pits until only the smallest remain. The precious salted pork or smoked fish cut into thinner and thinner slices, added sparingly to the eternal pottage that simmers always in the big pot over the fire. the stew growing thinner too with more water and fewer grains or roots, but still warm and filling in bellies that no real emptiness would be worse. Bread baked less often now, to save flour for longer. The dark, heavy loaves from last baking day long gone, and new ones waited for until enough families can spare grain for the shared oven. Every crumb saved and soaked in stew, because waste is unthinkable when children's eyes grow larger in thinner faces and grown-ups move slower to save strength. Yet even as cold deepens and storms come more often, bringing howling wind that shakes the hut walls and drives snow through every tiny crack until the floor near the door grows wet and freezes into slippery patches swept daily with a twig. Broom. Even as firewood stacks shrink visibly, and you begin burning older broken tools or fence posts, pulled from snow, or even carefully saved furniture that can be spared, because warmth matters more than sitting. Even as coughs start in chests from damp air, and someone's fever rises worrying everyone, until herbal teas of dried willow bark or elderflower bring it down slowly. There is a deep, quiet strength that grows in the shared endurance. Neighbors appearing without words when a roof sags dangerously under heavy snow to climb up together with ladders made from branches and pack fresh thatch or clear ice from the smoke hole, so smoke can escape and fire burn better. Women sharing small bundles of dried herbs when one family's supply runs low. Men helping carry wood for an elder who can no longer swing the axe. Children sent with messages or small gifts of an egg or handful of grain between huts to keep connection alive. Kindness flowing silent and steady, like an underground stream that keeps the village from freezing in spirit as well as body. Evenings remain the warmest time in every way. When chores are done and darkness has fallen early outside, but inside the hut, the fire is built as high as precious wood allows, and everyone gathers close on benches or straw-scattered floor. Faces glowing soft in the dancing light. Hands busy with small, endless tasks, mending clothes, stitch by careful stitch, in the best light of the day. Carving new tool handles from saved branches. Spinning wool slowly on drop spindles to make thread for spring needs. Shelling the last dried beans or peas, to prepare for tomorrow's pot. Telling long, slow stories that stretch the time pleasantly about winters remembered from childhood that were harder or easier, or about funny things that happened in better seasons, or about saints who helped poor people through cold and hunger, or about far places heard from rare travelers, though no one here has ever seen them. Singing gentle old songs learned from grandparents about love or harvest, or the promise of green fields returning. Voices blending soft and low with the crackle of burning wood and the occasional sigh from an animal settling for the night. Laughter coming quiet and rare, but real, when someone remembers a small funny moment from the day, like the goat stealing a child's rag mitten, or the way snow fell off the roof in a sudden pile burying the dog who shook it off with surprised dignity. Prayers come before sleep each night. The whole family kneeling together on the cold floor or straw near the hearth. heads bowed in the flickering light, asking simply for strength to face tomorrow and protection through the dark hours, and thanks for fire and food and family safe one more day. Words familiar and heartfelt repeated, generation after generation, carrying comfort deeper than any new phrase could. Then settling onto pallets under every blanket and cloak and skin the family owns. Bodies close for warmth with children tucked safest in the middle. The hut falling into deep stillness, broken only by wind high overhead or soft animal sounds or steady breathing of sleep. Thoughts drifting slow and calm over the day's small events. A clear sky that let sun shine, briefly warming the hut wall a little. A neighbor's help that lightened heavy work. A stew that tasted better than expected with an extra onion found. A child's smile despite tiredness, worries softened by exhaustion until sleep pulls everyone down heavy and renewing. Ready for another day of the same patient chores and care that keep life going through the longest, coldest months. Some winters are harder than others, remembered later in stories told to children by the same fire years on. Winters when snow came early and deep, trapping everyone inside for days with wind howling like wolves. When food ran so low that pottage became mostly water with a few grains and bark stripped carefully from certain trees added when nothing else remained. When illness spread from hut to hut, and old women worked tirelessly with herbs and hot stones and prayers to bring fever down. When firewood ended before snow melted and people burned whatever could catch flame, including precious stored seed if no other choice remained. Yet, even in those hardest times, the village held together, sharing what little was left without counting. Nursing the sick in turns. Telling stories longer to keep spirits up. Praying harder for mercy that always came in the end, with spring's first weak signs a longer day. A softy air, a drip of meltwater from the thatch. Green shoots brave under thinning snow, and life continued because ordinary people found extraordinary strength in simple togetherness and stubborn hope and faith that seasons turn no matter how long the wait. As weeks become months, and the cold holds fierce with no sign of softening. People learn to find small daily joys that keep hearts warm when bodies shiver a morning, when the fire lights easily from saved embers, saving precious kindling. A day without new snow letting paths stay clear a little longer. An egg laid unexpectedly by a hen encouraged by extra grain. A clear night when stars shine bright through the smoke hole, reminding everyone of the wide world still turning above the clouds. A child's laughter at a simple game played with sticks by the hearth. A story told that makes everyone smile, remembering better times. A quiet moment, sitting close, feeling family breathing nearby safe for now, and these small things weave together into a quiet peace deeper than any warm summer day could give, because they are earned against hardship and shared without need. For words. Children grow up learning winter's lessons early and gently, how to tend the fire without wasting wood. How to stretch food by eating slowly and saving crumbs. how to help neighbors without being asked, how to pray with true heart when all else feels uncertain, how to find joy in small things like the pattern snow makes on the shutter, or the way breath clouds dance in cold air, or the warmth of a parent's hand held during evening stories, and elders watch with quiet pride, knowing the same lessons. Carried them through their own hard seasons, and will carry the young ones too when their turn comes to tend the hearth and keep life going. Time in deep winter feels different. Days blending into one another with few markers, except the slow shrinking of wood and food piles, or the rare visit from the Lord's steward, wrapped warm in furs, demanding whatever small tax remains possible, even in hardest years, though. Sometimes mercy comes and he leaves without taking all, because even distant lords need living workers for spring planting. Moments accepted with silent gratitude, but no bowing too deep, because pride survives in empty stomachs too. And slowly, almost without noticing at first, the worst begins to pass. One morning the wind feels less sharp. One midday, the sun stays a little longer and melts snow on south-facing roofs into steady drips that run down thatch like quiet rain. One evening birds are heard again calling from the forest edge, as if testing whether spring might be safe to begin. Icicles grow long and thin and fall with soft thuds. Paths turn muddy underfoot instead of frozen hard. The cow gives a little more milk, sensing change coming. Hens lay more often. Stored seed is counted with new hope instead of worry. Smiles come easier, though no one says aloud that winter is ending, because speaking too soon might bring it back stronger. But hearts lighten all the same with the deep unspoken relief of having endured another long, brutal season together, without losing too many or giving up hope. The first real sign comes when snow pulls back from hut walls, revealing brown earth and old grass underneath. When streams begin to run loud with meltwater under thinning ice. When air carries the faint, clean smell of thawing soil instead of only frozen sharpness. When days grow noticeably longer and light lingers after evening chores, letting children play outside a little before dark. When fires are built smaller to save remaining wood for sudden cold snaps that sometimes return. When plans for spring planting start in quiet talks by the hearth, dreaming of green shoots and warm sun and full bellies again. And finally, one morning, everyone wakes to birdsong loud and cheerful through open shutters and soft, warm air flowing in where cold ruled for months. Snow reduced to patchy white in shaded spots. Mud deep and slippery, but welcome because it means life stirring below. The tools brought out for repair in the new light. Seeds sorted and counted with careful hands. Animals let out to graze on early green, if any dares appear. Smiles open and real on faces, thinner but stronger from the long trial passed together. Winter ends not with celebration, but with quiet, deep gratitude felt in every breath of softer air, and every step on muddy ground, and every look at the sky turning blue again. gratitude for fire that lasted, for food that stretched, for neighbors who helped, for family who shared warmth and stories and prayers, for strength found in patience and care, and simple continuing day after day until the season turned once more as it always has and always will, leaving behind memories told later to children by the same hearth of how hard it was and how they survived not through glory or riches, but through ordinary stubborn love and togetherness and faith, that spring returns faithfully to those who endure, carrying the village forward into new green life, richer in quiet wisdom earned against the cold, ready for whatever next season brings, because winter taught them again that life held carefully close can withstand even the longest, darkest cold, until light and warmth return to fill the valley once more with gentle promise and renewal.